Cricket at Lord's. The last day of the final test. England need just a few more runs to beat Australia. The TARDIS lands in the members' enclosure. Very bad form. The members are only slightly mollified when the Doctor emerges, with Jane, wearing a hastily donned tie and waving a very old membership card. 3 runs still needed. The batsman hits a 6 and the crowd goes wild. In the middle of the pitch, the Ashes are presented to the England captain. The Doctor causes a sensation by strolling over and asking if he could possibly take them, as they are rather important for the future of the galaxy. Confusion reigns, along with bewilderment, indignation, and all of the things that the English are so good at. Then, whilst the Doctor is discussing the matter quite pleasantly with 1 or 2 red-faced blustering gentlemen, something far more extraordinary happens. A small cricket pavilion materialises on the centre of the pitch. Its doors open, and 11 automata, all apparently wearing cricket whites, caps, pads, and carrying cricket bats, file out onto the pitch. Bewilderment turns to horror as these automata, moving as a tightly drilled-in and motionless team, club those in their immediate vicinity with their bats, seize the urn containing the ashes, and file back towards their pavilion. Before they depart, 2 of them use their bats as beam projectors to fire a few warning shots of stun ray into the crowd. Another tosses what appears to be a red ball into the air, and with a devastating hook, smacks it back into the tea tent, which promptly explodes. The door of the pavilion closes behind them, and it vanishes again. After a few seconds of stunned shock, the Doctor struggles back to his feet. My God, he breathes. So they've come back.
But it's preposterous. Absurd.
People exclaim. It's neither, pronounces the Doctor. It is the single most frightening thing I've seen in my entire existence. Oh, I've heard of the Krikkitmen. I used to be frightened with stories of them when I was a child. But till now, I've never seen them. They were supposed to have been destroyed over 2 million years ago.
But why,
people demand,
were they dressed as a cricket team? It's ridiculous.
The Doctor brusquely exclaims that the English game of cricket derives from one of the most curious freaks of racial memory, which can keep images alive in the mind aeons after their true significance has been lost in the midst of time. Of all the races in the galaxy, only the English could possibly revive the memory of the most horrific Star Wars that has ever sundered the universe and transform it into what is generally regarded as an incomprehensibly dull and pointless game. It is for that reason that the Earth has always been regarded slightly askance by the rest of the galaxy. It has inadvertently been guilty of the most grotesquely bad taste. The Doctor smiles again for a moment and says that he did enjoy the match, and could he possibly take the ball as a souvenir. The Doctor and Jane leave in the TARDIS. During the next couple of scenes, we learn some of the background history of the Krikkitmen from the Doctor's explanation to Jane, and his arguments with the Time Lords. If it can be done partly using flashback and archive recordings from Gallifrey, then so much the better. Brief history of cricket. The planet Krikkit lies in an isolated position on the very outskirts of the galaxy. Its isolation is increased by the fact it is obscured from the rest of the galaxy by a large opaque dust cloud. For millions of years, it developed a sophisticated scientific culture in all fields except that of astronomy, of which it understandably had virtually no knowledge. In all their history, it never once occurred to the people of Krikkit that they were not totally alone. Therefore, the day the wreckage of a spacecraft floated through the dust cloud and into their vicinity was one of such extreme shock as to totally traumatize the whole race. It was as if a biological trigger had been tripped. From out of nowhere, the most primitive form of racial consciousness had hit them like a hammer blow. Overnight, they were transformed from intelligent, sophisticated, charming, normal people into intelligent, sophisticated, charming, maniac xenophobes. Quietly, implacably, the people of Krikkit aligned themselves to their new purpose, the simple and absolute annihilation of all alien life forms. For 1,000 years they worked with almost miraculous speed. They researched, perfected, and built the technology to wage vast interstellar war. They mastered the technique of instantaneous travel in space, and they built the Krikkitmen. The Krikkitmen were anthropomorphic automata. They wore white uniforms, peaked skull helmets, which housed scything laser beams, and carried bat-shaped weapons, which combined the functions of devastating ray guns and hand-to-hand clubs. The lower half of their legs were, in fact, ribbed rocket engines, which enabled them to fly. By ingenious piece of systems economy, they were enabled to launch grenades with phenomenal accuracy and power simply by striking them with their bats. These grenades were small, red, and spherical, and varied between minor incendiaries and nuclear devices. They were detonated by impact, once their fuses had been primed by being struck by a bat. Finally, all preparations were complete, and with no warning at all, the forces of Krikkit launched a massive blitz attack on all the major centers of the galaxy simultaneously. The galaxy reeled. At this time, the galaxy was enjoying a period of great harmony and prosperity. This was often represented by the symbol of the Wicket Gate, 3 long vertical rods supporting 2 short horizontal ones. The left upright, of steel, represented strength and power. The right upright, of perspex, represented science and reason. The center upright, wood, represented nature and spirituality. Between them, the golden bale of prosperity and the silver bale of peace. The Star Wars between Krikkit and the combined forces of the rest of the galaxy lasted for 1,000 years and wreaked havoc throughout the known universe. After 1,000 years of warfare, the galactic forces, after some heavy initial defeats, eventually defeated the people of Krikkit. Then they have to face the Great Dilemma. The unswerving militant xenophobia of the Krikkiters rules out the possibility of reaching any modus vivendi and any peaceful coexistence. They continue to believe that their sacred purpose is the obliteration of all other life forms. However, they are quite clearly not inherently evil, but simply victims of a freakish accident of history. It is therefore implausible to consider simply destroying them all. What can be done? The solution. The planet of Krikkit is to be encased for perpetuity in an envelope of slow time, inside which life will continue almost infinitely slowly. All light is deflected round the envelope so that it remains entirely invisible and impenetrable to the rest of the universe. Escape from the envelope is impossible until it is unlocked from the outside. The action of entropy dictates that eventually the whole universe will run itself down, and at some point in the unimaginably distant future, that life and then matter will simply cease to exist. At that time, the planet of Krikkit and its sun will emerge from the slow time envelope and continue a solitary existence in the twilight of the universe. The lock, which holds the envelope in place, is on an asteroid which slowly orbits the envelope. The key was the symbol of the unity of the galaxy. A wicket of steel, wood, perspex, gold, and silver. Shortly after the envelope had been locked, a group of escaped Krikkitmen had attempted to steal the key, in the process of which it was blasted apart and fell into the space-time vortex. The passage of each separate component was monitored by the Time Lords. The ship containing the escaped Krikkitmen had been blasted out of the sky. All of the other millions of Krikkitmen were destroyed. Or were they? The Doctor and Jane go to Gallifrey to find some answers. The Doctor is furious with the bureaucratic incompetence of the Time Lords. The last component of the Wicket Gate to emerge from the space-time vortex was the wooden centre stump, which materialised in Melbourne, Australia in 1882 and was burnt the following year and presented as a trophy to the English cricket team. Only now, 100 years later, have the Time Lords woken up to the fact that every part of the wicket is now back in circulation and should be collected up and kept safely. The Time Lords at first refused to believe the Doctor's story that the Krikkitmen have stolen the ashes of the wooden stump. They say that every single Krikkitman was accounted for, and they are all safe. Safe? Exclaims the Doctor. I thought they were all destroyed 2 million years ago.
Well, not exactly destroyed as such,
begins one of the Time Lords, and a rather curious story emerges. The Krikkitmen, it seems, were in fact sentient androids, rather than mere robots. The difference is crucial, particularly in wartime. A robot, however complex, is basically a programmable fighting machine, even if an almost infinitely large number of response patterns give it the appearance of intelligent thought. On the other hand, a sentient android is taught rather than programmed. It has the capacity for actual initiative and creative thought, and a corresponding slight reduction in efficiency and obedience. They are, in fact, artificial men, and as such, protected under the galactic equivalent of the Geneva Convention. It was therefore not possible to exterminate the Krikkitmen, and they were instead placed in a specially constructed suspended animation vault buried in deep time, an area of the space-time vortex under the absolutely exclusive control of the Time Lords, and no Krikkitman has ever left it. Suddenly, news arrives that the Perspex stump has disappeared from its hiding place. The Time Lords are forced to admit that Doctor's story may be true, and tell him the locations of the other components of the Wicket. The Doctor and Jane hurriedly visit the planets where the other components are stored. First, the steel stump. They are too late. It is gone. Second, the gold bale. It is gone. Third, the silver bale. It is still there. If they can retrieve it, the key is useless and the universe is safe. It is worshipped as a sacred relic on the planet of Beth Selamin. Beth Selamini are predictably a little upset when the Doctor and Jane materialise in the Chamber of Worship and remove the sacred silver bale. The Doctor cannot stay to argue the point, but gives them a little bow, just as he is about to leave the chamber, thus fortuitously ducking his head at the precise moment that a cricket bat swings at him from the open door. They have arrived. A pitched battle ensues in which the Beth Selamini are rather forced to conjoin on the Doctor's side. During the battle, the Doctor finds his way into the Krikkitmen's pavilion, where he has to fight for his life. Just as a death blow is apparently about to be struck, the Doctor, half dazed, falls against a lever, and the Krikkitman slumps forward, paralysed. The Doctor has inadvertently switched them all off. The battle is over. The Doctor is incredulous. If it is possible to simply turn them off, then they can't possibly be sentient androids. They must be robots. So what were the Time Lords talking about? Why weren't the Krikkitmen destroyed? The Beth Selamini are recovering. Jane seems to be slightly dazed, staring into the face of a paralysed Krikkitman. She soon recovers. We gather, though the Doctor doesn't notice, that she may have been hypnotised. The Doctor dismantles one Krikkitman to examine its interior. He discovers that it is cunningly disguised as an android, but that in all crucial respects the circuitry is robotic, a fact that anyone making a thorough examination would quickly notice, unless of course he didn't want to look very hard. The Doctor and Jane return to the TARDIS. The next step is clear. If the Krikkitmen are merely robots after all, then they must all be destroyed at once. So, off to the Deep Time Vault. Jane points out that they shouldn't leave the pavilion and the paralysed Krikkitmen on Beth Selamin, but take them back to Gallifrey for safekeeping and/or destruction. The Doctor complains that he can't do both things at once. Jane's bright idea: if the Doctor will preset all the controls in the pavilion and guarantee that all the Krikkitmen are now absolutely harmless, then she will take them back to Gallifrey and wait for him there. Nothing basically wrong with that, says the Doctor, and agrees. What he doesn't see is that while his back is turned for a few moments, Jane quickly and quietly switches a few of the TARDIS controls, whilst a foreign intelligence flickers briefly through her eyes. As they leave the TARDIS, Jane surreptitiously hangs her hat over a panel of lights. The Doctor sets the controls of the pavilion and, rather reluctantly, leaves her to it. As soon as she is alone, Jane completely resets the pavilion controls and it dematerializes. The Doctor watches the pavilion leave and then returns to the TARDIS. Whilst he is setting the controls, he notices that one or two of them are in the wrong position. With a momentary frown, he resets them and dematerializes the TARDIS. It is clear that the journey into deep time is immensely complicated and actually requires the active assistance of the Time Lords. Eventually, the TARDIS materializes in a large chamber full of life support sarcophagi. The chamber is clearly just one of a very large number. He leaves the TARDIS. He passes Jane's hat, but fails to notice that underneath it, a bright warning light is flashing. After he is gone, a hand picks up the hat. Under it, a lighted panel reads, "Screens breached. Intruders in TARDIS." The hand is Jane's. Keeping carefully out of sight, she follows the Doctor out of the TARDIS.